Pardon us a moment. They're trying to make sure this is YouTube broadcasted. Okay, good morning, everybody. This is the Attorney General's office. Today's date is August 31, Thursday at about 9:30. The purpose of this roundtable discussion is to address certain issues that our office is wanting to get to the bottom of, for lack of a better expression. I want to thank you all for attending. Is this working good? I want to thank you all for attending. We have present at the table today. To my right, I have the Chief Deputy Joe Guthrie. We have Mr. John Sablon here, who is the business owner. I have Graham Botha, the Division Deputy for Civil Division in our office. We have Daphne Shimizu, the Director of the Department of Revenue and Taxation, as well as Joe Borja, the Director of the Department of Land Management, and to his left, Ms. Celine Cruz, who's our Chief Planner at the Department of Land Management. Also, I have my investigator, Kian Pangilinan, as well. Kian, why don't you come over here? Yes, a little bit closer, please. Thank you. As I said, this is mainly information gathering. I wanted to say a few things in the beginning because I know this can be kind of tension-filled. That I appreciate everybody respecting each other's positions here today. I've opened it up to the public because I thought that it was important, and I would rather not close something when we're dealing with something as important as the service to our community and the government officials trying to enforce our laws and follow the rules that we all have to follow, both the government and our community. The main purpose is to acquire the facts today, and then for our office here, which I have the two attorney deputies, to review them and to decide whether or not what type of legal guidance we can give to our government officials on this. Okay, that is the approach we're going to take. There will be no answers today. I don't think that we can come to that conclusion, given the amount of years that this has progressed. From my understanding, maybe back in '82. So we're talking about more than 30 years, maybe 40, something like that, years that it took to get to where we're at today. I'm going to keep it a little bit open as long as everybody's respecting each other in terms of the contributions. Our understanding at the AG's office, and I'll ask that the government officials can kind of assist us with this. And I want to do a timeline type of approach here so that we can take the notes and make sure that we got the timelines right. This started with a different company back in '82, I believe. Celine, are you acquainted with kind of the fact patterns that are going on here? Okay, so I think you might be the best person to start off our conversation here. Now, I have the business owner present here. If I can ask, are you a homeowner, sir? If I may? No. Okay. Do we have any homeowners here that are in the area? I would ask that maybe we get one representative that can fill in some of the empty chairs here. Who's this Public Works? Do we have Ms. Santos from Public Works present? Yoli, remove that placard there. We asked DPW to be present because there may have been a DPW issue. And sir, can you identify yourself, if I may?
Frank Charpers.
Mr. Charpers?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Charpers has been communicating with our office, giving us some background information. And just to be full disclosure, we have been reviewing this matter for months now. We have our investigator here that had been visiting the site and taking a look at it and so forth. So other homeowners, if you want to be able to speak into the mic quickly. Sir, in the Burgundy, your name is? I'm sorry? Mr. Gumaban, would you like to sit up here? Please. Sir, your name is?
My name is Richard Markester. I'm a business owner here in Guam.
Okay. You're not one of the homeowners though, right?
I'm a homeowner.
next to where they're,
2 doors away from the range.
where the range. Very good. You guys want to pull down your mics a little bit? That probably is gonna help the recording better. Okay. So having said that, Celine, do you want to kind of give us some history of where this has been and where we're at now? Sure. Very good. Yeah, Lori, increase the volume. There's, I can't hear, Lori, increase the volume. There should be a speaker back there. Yeah. Yeah, but I still can't hear as well. Turn up the volume a little bit so that everybody can hear us. Okay, Director.
Testing. We prepared, first off, Attorney General and Mr. Sablan, thank you for bringing this issue out in the open. Thank you for shining a light on the situation, and thank you to your investigator, Pangilinan, who came to my office, I believe, in February of this year. So, and we provided in the files. In 1982, the Territorial Planning Commission, which is the precursor.
Excuse me, Director. Lori, we're getting feedback. Turn down that volume. Thank you. Director.
In 1982, the Territorial Planning Commission, which is the precursor to the Guam Land Use Commission, in case number 83-33, granted a notice of action for a zone variance for lot number 10095, which is approximately 7 acres, for a firing range by Guam American Sportsland. There was no public hearing on this particular case. In that notice of action, there were 4 conditions placed on the approved notice of action. Number 1 was that a 6-foot-high fence be constructed with barbed wire on top of all 3 sides of the property. Number 2, that applicant works with the Air Force regarding the pipeline crossing. Number 3, that the applicant meets National Rifle Association requirements. And number 4, that the applicant meets DPS safety standards. DPS is the precursor to the Guam Police Department. In 1983, the TPC granted a notice of action for conditional use permit for snack bar and souvenirs for lot number 10095-8. Liquor sales restrictions were to be decided by the Alcohol Beverage Control, and this was under Guam American Sportsland. In 1984, the TPC granted a notice of action for zone variance for a dune buggy trail on lot 10095-7 and lot number 10095-8 to Guam American Sportsland. And interesting to note that in this particular application, Guam American Sportsland was represented by a gentleman who actually became Director of Land Management later on. Land management records do not have anything for the years 1985, 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990, 1991, 1992, 1993, 1994, 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015, and 2016. Now, this is any action by land management or the Guam Land Use Commission during those years. That's not to say that they didn't have a business license or that the business was operating or not operating. That would have to come from revenue and taxation on the business license issue. In 2017, JTM requested a letter from the Guam Land Use Commission, which was previously the TPC, addressed to John Arroyo, then the GLUC chairman, and Michael Borja, then the Guam Land Use Executive Secretary, requesting a letter affirming that the issued permit in 1982 was still valid so that he could use it as a decision factor before purchasing the property. And JTM, of course, is Mr. John Sablan. Interesting to note that I got a call yesterday or a WhatsApp message from the former chief planner at land management before Ms. Cruz was the chief planner. And his message basically stated that Ms. John Sablan stated DLM gave him an approval. I know DS, and I can share this with you, was attempting to assist him because he is an NRA member, but his application did not go anywhere. It was for conditional use permit for an open firing range. I recall that conditional use permit application didn't go anywhere, and this was sometime in 2018, and probably in response to the letter that Mr. Sablan requested. On September 12, 2018, DPW granted a clearing and grading permit to clear an additional 14,000 square meters, about half of the lot, construct an 8-foot by 650-foot berm and 15-foot by 150-foot cap, both with soil. In 2019, there was an amendment to lease executed July 10, 2019. The paragraph stated, the lease stated, the amendment stated, paragraph 1 of the lease is hereby amended to state that the term of this lease shall be 60 years, commencing the first day of January 1983. The document, of course, the amendment was executed on July 10, 2019, but that paragraph wanted to show that the lease actually commenced on January 1983, kind of like backdating the lease, and that document is recorded. In 2020, the Department of Land Management server crashed, losing some of the documents pertaining to this issue. We only have a copy of an initial draft of the response letter that was eventually kept to Mr. Sablan. The draft response letter from the GLUC was prepared by then Planner 4, Celine Cruz. Celine is now the DLM Chief Planner. Chief Planner Celine Cruz submitted her draft to Senior Planner Frank Titano, Marvin Aguilar, who was the Chief Planner at the time, and the DLM Director Michael Borja, who felt it was too lenient and drafted and sent his own version of the letter responding to JTM. We have no copy of this Michael Borja letter, as I stated before, because of the DLM server crash. And we have communications with OTEC on the problem when the server crashed back in 2020. But we believe that this Michael Borja letter recommended that JTM take the issue before the Guam Land Use Commission in an application format. And we believe that that's what triggered JTM to seek the services of one of Guam's premier land use consultant, who was also an NRA member.
Mr. Borja, who is that again? That individual you're referring to, the consultant?
Dan Swavely.
Mr. Swavely.
Yes. In 2020, the DOM Planning Division was constantly adapting its business license clearance process due to the COVID lockdown of August 2020, which was lifted in September 2020. And again, the Planning Division, because of COVID, was constantly adapting its business license clearance to get into the on-land process where applicants didn't have to come down to the land management or DPW and do a face-to-face thing. In September 16, 2020, JTM Bentres applied for a business relocation permit to relocate his retail outlet from office in Jigo and to consolidate it with the firing range in that area where it's presently located at now. In March 21, 2020, saw the enactment of Public Law 36-7, which was an act to, I won't read the numbers here, but which was an act to relative to enforcing the terms and conditions of use permits, variances, and zone changes. That's March 2021, which gave land management and the other agencies the authority to not approve permits that weren't conforming to the terms, to the conditions set. And we note this because the foundation of Mr. Sablan JTM's request or his business license was based on the foundation of the original notice of action granted back in 1982 that had that 4 conditions. So if he's riding on that approved notice of action back in 1982, then he must comply with the conditions that were put on that approved NOA. In June 13, 2022, Department of Revenue and Taxation Business License number 16-000085019-01 was renewed online. This business license had the notice on it that said, I quote, DLM/DPW/GPD/NRA compliance needs to re-inspect before renewal. Generally,
Mr.
but
Rojas, I'm sorry, what date was that?
June 13, 2022.
Thank you.
Generally, but not completely mirroring the original 4 conditions set in the 1982 NOA. At this time, business license fees were waived to help businesses through the lockdown and were not required to do the walkabout of processing, applying for a business license at the various different agencies. Note here is that $000 was paid for this license. As noted, paid on the license. This business license was for the time period 2022 to 2023 and expired June 29, 2023. However, DRT extended the time to apply to July 2023. And it's not this not paid or free thing was not really specific to Mr. Sablan.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was for everyone.
right.
Yeah.
Quick question on this. What was the license for specifically? That was one license, right? Application, my understanding?
It was for a shooting gallery.
Just a shooting gallery? We're not
Yes.
talking the retail sales.
I believe no, no, yeah. But
Thank you.
the original NOA grant approved a shooting range as a firing range rather, as opposed as the shooting gallery. I don't know the difference on that, but I just know that the type of business there was changed suddenly from a firing range to a shooting gallery. Okay. On July 14, 2022, a meeting was scheduled based on a complaint that was received by the GLUC. That meeting of July 14 was canceled, but it was held later on July 28, 2022. And basically, the continuing operation of the firing range is brought before the GLUC in a staff report, which was actually a response, an item-by-item response filed by residents around the firing range. The GLUC meeting of July 28, which was a Zoom video meeting, was duly noticed and is archived in the DLM YouTube files, and the audio files are archived in the Office of the Public Auditor website. Note that this complaint was developed from a FOIA request that was properly filed and processed. That FOIA request details, as others are, is filed with the Office of the Attorney General. July 2023, the extension for business license expired. There was a notice of renewal of business license that came to our office, we couldn't really read who the person that made that application. But it did know that it was an authorized representative, which we assume is from the business license applicant. Clearance is needed or handwritten in the notice. We are not sure by who that those clearances were needed. The August 23, and and here we are now in August 23. It's really not in the normal process for land management review of a license renewal. Previous to when we came in, this administration in 2019, if an existing, an active license was renewing its property, a business license, those for bypass land management, because we don't expect that a business owner would downzone his property, to not make him comply with the zoning laws. So previous to January 2019, those renewals of active business licenses or an automatic renewal, land management doesn't review that. And in certain cases, I believe that might be a loophole and in the process, and I'll let the director of revenue and tax decide on that, because they have closed the I do have Attorney General, and again I want to thank you and Mr. Sablan for bringing this out in the open. I won't say it now, but I do have suggested solutions.
Very good.
Solutions are always uphill, but I'm not
for
gonna mention that now until the end of the meeting.
Thank you. In terms of the timeline, you mentioned that there was in 2022, there was a note that the inspections from DLM, DPW, GPD, and so forth needed to be done. Did the file reflect any inspections in this regard? This was a renewal license. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and thank you so much. And again, thank you as well. We're grateful, AG Moylan, that you're bringing this issue, and of course, want to make sure we address this matter. With regards to renewals, and of course, Director Borja from Land Management did mention that in general, for renewals, the going through the clearances for the various agencies is not a general practice. However, my understanding from our team is that when there is reason to believe it is necessary to have a licensee obtain those clearances, then that actually is a practice that has been done. And that's based on discussion with my team. In 2018, and again, Mr. Borja did a great job at providing a timeline. But of course, in 2018 was when when the renewal, after I think a couple of decades of a license being expired and not renewed, was occurred for this shooting range or shooting gallery, and that was in 2018 by the Department of Revenue Taxation. At that time, the renewal was done without any clearances being required from any other agencies, just only internal clearances by DRT. And then, of course, this particular matter probably didn't get, it didn't come to our attention at the department until maybe around 2020, is I believe when we received the first kind of communication from some of the residents of that area.
If I can clarify, based on the timeline, was the last license expired in 1984? When does the license expire on this one?
I don't have the exact date for that, but we can get that for you.
Yeah, I would be interested in understanding, because we're talking about a renewal situation. I understand that the original company may have sold its rights to Mr. Sablan's company. So if we proceed on that understanding, when did the license not get renewed? And then when did it start getting renewed again? According, if I may inquire, Director Shimizu, is that in 2022, or 2017?
So my understanding is that 2018 was when the license, after being expired for at least a couple of decades, is my understanding, was renewed at the department. And any penalties associated with that, which was $1 a day generally, was satisfied and renewed. But it was not treated as if it was a new license. It was treated as if it was a renewal, but again, after many decades. And so, and that was done by, our employee who was involved in that transaction had retired from our agency a few years ago, so he's no longer with us. But subsequent to that, in 2019, again, generally renewals don't require any clearances from the other agencies, as is done with the initial license application. So in 2019, again, it was the license was renewed. However, again, this particular issue of the potential of there being an issue with residents in the area because of the shooting range or gallery probably didn't come to our attention until about 2020, which was when we began to receive some letters from residents of that area. And so in 2020, it was when it had come to light. And of course, that was something new to us. We did not know the situation. And after that, again, 2020, 2021, I believe it was in 2021 renewal when our team did indicate in the system the notes which Mr. Borja had read out regarding the requirements for renewal, which would include a DLM reinspection or a DLM clearance. And again, our team has advised me that as a practice, if there is a belief that there is a need for reinspection for any reason, again, safety and other, that they have done that before. And so we did indicate that that was in the system. And however, in 2022, as Director Borja mentioned, the license for the shooting gallery was actually renewed online, which meant that there was no need for anybody to come into the office in order to be able to renew it. And there was no actual flag or anything that prevented the license from being renewed online. So that's how it had come about. But in 2023, I believe when the license was going to be renewed, our team did flag it and advise, I believe that there was a clearances required, but those notes regarding the clearances were already indicated on the license that was issued. Again, it was online in 2022.
Why did the license expired this year, my understanding?
Correct. So the initial license expired June 2023. However, because of Typhoon Mawar, and I need to look at the language, AG Moylan, because of Typhoon Mawar, what we did was we allowed for, and again, the consideration, meaning not charging the penalty of $1 per day for those businesses that had licenses which expired in May initially and June because of the typhoon. Then it was May, June, and July, as long as they had actually renewed by, I think, August 3. And so I do need to look at the language of how we worded that, because I believe it can be interpreted a couple of different ways. It can be interpreted as if the license is actually extended. However, I don't believe that the renewal date of the license for like next year would be July or August if an extension happens. So it may also be viewed as just the consideration on or not charging of the penalty and allowing for the license to continue to be valid.
Is this the governor that extended the license? His licenses, they normally expire on June 30, my understanding?
So in 2014, Senator Mary Torres had, there was a law that actually went into place which changed the renewal of business licenses because DRT had been very overwhelmed with all of the business licenses having to be renewed in June. So Senator Mary Torres's law at that time allowed for the licenses to expire at the time, I believe, that the business actually began, or yeah. So we don't have every license renewing or expiring in June anymore, but the majority of them still do. But there are some that some of them reverted back again to the date that the license or the application may have been
So if I may respectfully request, could you have your staff do a specific search on the shooting gallery license on when it and Mr. Sablan, you're welcome to chime in at any time if you have a sure. So if they can do a check on that, because there's been some change of law, and then we had the emergency situation that occurred. Mr. Sablan, can you find the packet that says the board uses on the conditional? Yeah, Mr. Sablan, I understand that back in '82 or thereabouts, the what they call the Territorial Planning Commission back then, there was a document that I noticed that required the governor's signature at the end of the TLUC or the territorial planning TPC process. Did you guys look at that? There's a specific requirement, at least in the documents, back in the law at the time, that the governor should have signed it. I didn't see it. Do you happen to have that?
Yes, yes, I do. And the note says approval by the TPC of a zone change does not constitute final approval, but rather a recommendation to the governor for his approval. Notification will be sent upon action taken by the governor.
The packet that we received in advance, I did not see the document signed by the governor. And back then, what is it, Joetta or? Paul Calvo. Thank you. Yeah, if it's a Paul Calvo Senior. So that is a question that I had on my notes as I reviewed this. So if we can find out, and we'll check the law to see if the governor's approval was required under the law back in 82, 83 era. But I think that's an important part so that we don't proceed without making sure the law is being followed.
Can I chime in now, AG Morton?
I'd like to add to that particular discussion.
Yes.
I've voided a lot of documents and
Sir, if I might get your name, please,
brain troubles.
Mr. Sharpers, yes.
So that particular document where this governor had to sign off could not be considered by a brain hacker. So they have no record of it.
If I may, the note says it's approval of zone changes requires signature of the governor. And this particular notice of action was not for a zone change, it was for a zone variance.
A variance. So is it my understanding at DLM that the governor's signature would not be required
On a zone variance,
on a
no,
zone variance? No.
no,
And that's been the practice?
correct.
Very good. Thank you.
So what I wanted to say, kind of lost my train of thought, but first of all, back in 1982, I was 10 years old. So I'm relying on the government to know their jobs, know what they're supposed to do. And when in 2018, we renewed that business license, they proudly gave it to us. I paid $12,000 to renew that business license. Immediately, they tried to shut me down. Well, not immediately, around 2020. After we started construction, we were already approved by the government. We started pumping money into this property. And I started getting calls from DRT saying they erroneously issued our business license. And I asked Miss Bayona, why? What does that mean? And she said, oh, because you didn't pay a $200 recreational fee. I said, I'll be right up. I paid the fee, showed her that I paid $11,995, and she couldn't find it in the system. So it's not my fault or my duty to keep records for the government of Guam. When you give me the business license, that is the last document that says to any business owner, you can open your doors. Am I correct?
Well, Mr. Sablon, I thank you for adding that to it. My understanding where we're at now, it looks like a business license has expired. It sounds like it. There's now a question.
If I may, it expired because the two departments working in,
Right,
I would,
right, but I mean, we proceed with the assumption that business licenses are good for a period of time.
correct,
In the past, it was usually a year that the
Correct.
person would go in and apply for it, get it. So for that 1 year of performance, you were earning money on it, right?
correct,
Right.
correct.
So it was a renewal situation that came up.
Yes,
One of the government departments decided that they wanted to put the brakes on it because of concerns. So that's where I'm at. No wrongdoing is being attributed to anyone.
Well-
I'm just trying to cut to where we're
Sure.
at now, right?
well, I want to say for that DLM inspection requirement on the license. So Mr. Bora brought up the fact that GLUC cited 4 conditions that the shooting range had to abide by. Again, when I renewed my license in 2018, that told me they already did. It's already been done. Now, the law, 11 GCA, does not require any business to go to the GLUC to restate our position or how do you say it, protect our interest anymore. We did it once, that's what the law requires. We don't need to do it again. Now, I got that from another government official who had a conversation with Mr. Bora because nobody at DLM would give me in writing what exactly the issue was. That is why we got the notice of violation to cease operation because of the failure to renew the business license. It wasn't for the fact that we are trying to escape renewing the business license or paying any fee. It was because we didn't get any written notice
Okay,
from DLM as to what the problem was, so that I can attempt to fix it before we expire.
right. And that's why we're here today,
Okay.
because I've seen enough red
Sorry,
flags.
I'm
that
getting a
we wanna-
little, I'm getting a little,
I got you. It's-
Yeah.
I know, it's your business.
Yeah.
So let's, we're at a point now that I've seen those four conditions. They're actually typed out, they're handwritten in other places.
Right.
So we have that, Demetrio Pablo, Executive Secretary, the notice of action that was issued back in, December 1982 period. One of the questions that's coming to my mind, because it's very specific, 6-foot high fence to be constructed with barbed wire in the top. Does it operate with that?
so we had a 6-foot high fence. Oh, of course, over the time that it's been dilapidated, we put up an emergency fence on the left side of the property because of the neighbors in the area.
Well, it's just for anyone going into the shooting range and getting shot, right?
Correct.
That's why they
correct.
wanted the fence and they barbed wire on it. But that doesn't exist right now, so.
The
I'm not
fence
making any-
exists, but not the barbed
the
wire
barbed
on the
wire.
top.
Okay, the second one was, the applicant works with the Air Force regarding the pipeline crossing. Does that
So-
exist anymore?
So it doesn't exist because the property's been developed since 1982.
So that doesn't,
That obviously has been an issue that's been taken care of a long time ago.
okay,
The roadway's been paved there, so I'm assuming that,
there's no pipeline that you're aware of?
yeah, it might be, but it's under the road somewhere, but I didn't put it there. I didn't,
Okay.
you know,
Okay, again, we're talking back in 1982.
yes, yes.
And then number 3 was that the applicant meets the National Rifle Association requirements. I see that at least offhand now, and I'll stand to be corrected as we go forward. The NRA must make sure that your range is in compliance.
So that's a little bit of ignorance on the part of the people that wrote that thing, because the NRA is not a regulatory agency. They are a nonprofit organization that fights for citizens'
Right.
Second Amendment
I
rights.
think I was a member at some point.
Yeah, they
But
don't
my
they don't
point
do
is-
that kind of stuff.
Right, Mr. Sabla, my point is, I just want to make it clear on the factual issue on whether or not any NRA association requirements have been certified or a letter given to you.
No,
Okay, and you're saying basically that they don't.
they don't do that kind of
Okay.
stuff. Unless they mean the National Recovery something that was defunct back in 1933 by Roosevelt.
Understood.
I don't know.
Okay, that was the number 3. Number 4 was the applicant meets DPS safety standards. That's
Every
GPD.
year we renew the license. GPD gives us a certification.
Good.
And
Okay.
that's their sign off.
Okay. Okay, those were the 4 that were issued back then. You want to continue? Well, we have a situation.
I have a history, so I mean, he went, he brought up the history 1982 before I was the owner.
Right.
And that's great. I have a history of myself of the kind of, over the years, we've been feeling like, seriously, every year we renew our license, there's always an issue. And it seems to be stemming from a single noise complaint.
Well,
Now, when the business license gets over the hump with a little help, you know, I'm all about government helping the people, but not when it harms somebody else. So every time we go up to renew the business license, always an issue, we get it over the hump. I have 2 businesses, JTM Bench Rest, the gun shop. Takes me 5 minutes to renew the business license. Sportsland, sheesh, probably a month, 2 months sometimes. I have to get people involved.
if I can inquire, it was brought to my attention that there may be 2 licenses being involved here, the shooting range and then an operation of a retail business.
So the retail, so I had a conversation with Joe Borja. It's in my notes here. I don't know the exact date, but I was trying to relocate from Route 1 in Jigo, the gun shop, to the Sportsland shooting range property to operate the retail store in conjunction with the shooting
Right,
range.
but this is an agricultural property, so you need to have specific zoning authorization
Well,
to do that.
so land management or revenue tax already granted Sportsland a retail license. They were saying, he was telling me that they couldn't, or so
Did
they
you ever have a retail license for that?
for,
For the the operation of your retail business? Did you get a license for that?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Are you
So
talking
we'll
about
have
on
to
the
follow that.
existing
out.
property?
Right,
Yeah,
at the
yes,
the
we
Dededo
currently
location.
we currently have a license.
Very good.
But back when we were trying to relocate, Celine's, Ms. Cruz's, explanation was that the license was approved for a souvenir shop. I argued with her, what's a souvenir shop? It's a retail license. It's just in different words. What do they do with their souvenir shop? right? They don't just display, it's not a museum. So I argued with her, she still didn't budge. So we were looking through our documents, historical documents, we found a business license issued to Sportsland for a retail license for a snack bar and something else.
What year, if you were looking at,
I believe it was 1986.
you know, I'm not gonna require you to give us
Well,
any
I have all
documents,
of the
but when
documents.
you have, if you feel that it
Sure,
would help us
sure.
in our analysis, that would be.
Well, I
great.
told Joe that, and his comment was, hold that document, John, that's gonna be your saving grace. I said,
Right.
why can't you just approve the dang thing right now then? It's my saving grace. It's, you guys issued it. You can't not cancel it, you know, because you feel that the words is not matching. You know,
Right, and that's why
it's
we have.
real
the-
nitpicky,
Right, well,
you know?
let me just kind of bring this to the surface a bit. The way you are speaking is exactly how I would speak, were it not for that I became a lawyer and was punished in the legal system for the past 30 years.
I'll try to keep it down.
No, but what you have legitimate concerns, and I recognize that. Going to a government agency and expecting certain things, these lawyers here and who we have to answer before the judges, they come up with those rules that the legislature passes and so forth. So, you know, we're looking at proper zoning. Mr. Borja has been trained in that, that they're always looking at, is this a proper operation for the area? In our zoning law, and we have classes in law school that talk about zoning law, it's meant to respect everybody's property rights in a zone area, right?
Totally understand, totally
Right.
agree. However, there wasn't that decided back in 1982?
But you see, this is the question why I'm here. It was an agricultural zone. I think
Right.
everybody agrees with that. It's still an agricultural zone.
Right.
There's certain permitted uses in our, I think, Title 21 Guam Code annotated.
Right.
It tells you what you can do in a zone. You got a special treatment because you got a conditional, your company before you
Yes.
got a special treatment. They made the application, they satisfied the Territorial Planning Commission,
Right.
and they got it with the 4 conditions. Since that time, but that was only for a shooting range.
Correct.
So when Mr. Borja and Reverend Tax is asking, it didn't say a retail establishment.
It
For
does.
us legally, we have to confirm in the TPC that they went from an agricultural zone to a shooting range to also a retail establishment.
Okay.
Because that's how the court is going to
Sure.
review it, if ever the court needs to review this. And again, I'm trying to get involved to avoid people from having to go to court, which is time, anxiety, you know, the whole things that can, an expense, of going through a litigation process, if we
Well,
can avoid it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'd like to avoid that too,
Now,
but
this might be a good time, William, put up the Google map, area, shot of that area.
if I can just finish my statement earlier. So every business license renewal since 2018 has been an uphill battle for us. Once we get that over the hump, and we get that business license issue with help from some people that, you know these individuals, for the entire year, nobody bothers us. Nobody
Right.
says anything until we renew again.
Right.
It's happened every year for 4 or 5 years
I can see
already.
the frustration in it, but at the other side, Mr. Borja and Ms. Shimizu are held to make sure that they're following the licensing
law,
law
yeah.
properly. So now, which is north?
I think it's that way.
So the north is on the top of that photo. So on the right side, there appears to be homes that have been built.
Correct.
That's my understanding. William, pull out just a little bit. A little bit more. So the fire is going towards the
That patch of
front side,
jungle.
right? Right. What is
No,
that
it's
building?
coming down this way,
Right. What is that building to the left there? That one?
where the arrow's at, where the cursor's at. That's I believe, the Cockfight Dome.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now-
that's off of Chala and Lamasu.
Okay. So one of the things that we're obviously going to have to look at is the manner in which the 1982 approval was, gotta write this down. The manner in which the 1982 license had been, for the conditional, is this a conditional use permit or a variance?
Variance.
Sorry, for the firing range, it's a zone variance.
Okay.
For the retail operation, it's a conditional use.
Okay, so there's 2 approvals that were given.
Yes.
Okay, very good. We have to look back at that and see that it was properly passed. Obviously, the issuance of the licenses show that the government believed that it had been properly passed on that level. And then it didn't specify whether it's a rifle or a pistol range, right?
It did not, no.
Okay, because the concern now, this is the balance that, apart from being an attorney, but it's everybody in this room. You have a financial interest in using your property the way that you had received it and purchased and so forth and developed it. The other side are the homeowners that
Right.
don't want to get a bullet shot at their, this is not golf balls,
Correct.
which we normally talk about in golf clubs. This is the shooting range. And that is more important to the Attorney General's office to ensure that people are not hurt by the shooting range. And we're talking about an action that was taken 40 years ago. And I don't know if this photo that we have up here was that there was nobody around it at that time. And I'll make no question about it. I'm concerned about rifles being used on that range. And whether or not you have a berm or whether or not there's no way that that rifle is going to be stopped. Question, 30-06 is one of the most powerful hunting rifles.
Sure.
What is the range of a 30-06 round?
I don't have that information
Right,
off
it's
my head.
miles. I think it's at least 1 mile. So my concern with the investigator was after that berm on the bottom, towards the bottom of the photo, what is the distance between your shooting range and that road there?
And
that's a
bottom,
good-
Chalon Lamasu,
Right. That's a concern that I have as a Attorney General,
about
that
900.
a round that shoots over that berm is going to hit somebody on that road.
Okay.
So these are the concerns. I'm not making any
Sure,
judgment right
sure,
now, but
sure.
the balance that we're doing
Well,
is your rights as a private property owner
right.
compared to individuals' rights out there that are in the public.
Okay, well, I do want to answer to that because the way
Let's let Mr. Sablan.
so we built that range in accordance with NRA guidelines, mind you. So they're designed to stop bullets. Now, we've reported on numerous occasions to GPD where there's shooting happening outside of our property, both left, right, and, the back, the front, all directions. Not all at one time, but every time we get a shot or two or a burst of a machine gun fire, because we heard it. And I tell my RSOs, my range safety officers, to call it in right away so that we can contact GPD so that they can put it on record. I have a log of all those. So what I'm trying to say is that we are not the only ones shooting in the area, but we are the safest ones in that area because that's what it was designed to do, keep the bullets into the range. Now, if bullets are landing somewhere in somebody else's property, now you have to ask yourself, with all those other people not using the shooting range in the area, is it possible that the bullet came from them? Because,
Well, the basic, my understanding of, and I'll stand corrected, my basic understanding of Guam law is that the criminal code is that you cannot discharge a firearm within 50 yards of a habitable residence sort of thing. So
except,
if somebody's in there shooting, target
Correct.
practicing inside the jungle area,
yes,
as long as they're 50 feet away from the
50 yards.
50 yards,
yes,
right now, you're not going to get a criminal charge against you. Sort of
Yes.
thing. So
but it doesn't stop the bullet.
understood.
The berm stopped the bullet.
But let's focus upon what you're licensed to do, what you guys
Sure.
are doing,
Sure.
and legally, they went through the process way back then. Sir,
But the law though,
Uh-huh.
with regard to the 50-yard, does not apply to any
Right.
shooting range.
you've been licensed, so that would take you outside of that criminal statute.
Okay.
I'm just saying that any gunfire that you may be hearing, maybe
Yes.
somebody legally
Sure, sure.
doing it inside the jungle area.
Sure, and it might be
So-
legal, but it still might not stop the bullet.
Understood. Yes, sir.
See that house right there on the corner of the Master Street? The big house.
Okay, do we have a pointer or anything? We need to, which one, sir, if you want to point it down, please.
Right here, that's my house.
Okay, sir, your name is?
Move on.
Mr. Gumabon.
I was standing outside my yard a couple of months ago, talking to Chaplain's wife. And the runway was going on. I can't say it came from them or what, but a stray bullet almost hit us.
Did you happen to take a photo of that or?
How do you take a photo of a bullet?
Okay, it didn't hit your house or anything with
No,
the evidence,
all we
but you heard it,
All we heard was the bullet went right
yeah,
beside us.
whizzing by, yeah. Well, when was this?
This is a couple of months ago.
Okay.
So ever since then, I'm scared to to take my grandkids out of my house because they're always outside my house playing.
Right, so that's the estate, basically, you're next to the road,
Yeah.
right there, right?
Look
Okay,
at the direction of fire.
yeah, let's.
But I
let's
was
do this.
standing outside talking,
Yes, you will, just
talking
hold
to
on.
his wife. And all we heard was a bullet.
Yeah.
Go right by it. So we had to run in.
Okay.
You know, that's scary.
What, was there any, were you able to call the police or anything like that?
No,
But you and your wife were witnesses to it? That's
his
what you-
wife.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
his wife.
But
Mr. Charpers.
ever since then, it scares me to bring my grandkids outside because they're always outside playing. I mean, you know, that's safety in a residential area. I support these guys with their shooting range. I got nothing, no problem with that. I'm retired Army. I support them, but in the residential area where I'm at, and I'm, you know, to scare me to bring my grandkids out there to play outside, and you don't know when they're gonna get hit with a bullet.
Right,
I mean, I understand that, you know, it's a gun range, but there's gotta
Right.
be a better system.
One-
I'm
one of
not
the-
saying that your system is not good, but to have that straight bullet come by my house, and as far as a distance from that
yeah,
range, that's scary.
it's next to the road, so that's what,
I don't know the distance between the range of my house.
you're gonna have to do it.
May I pick it?
William, are you able to use the measuring tool?
But I was right outside of the main, right in front of my house.
Between
on
the-
that main road,
The gun range and
and
the
when
house?
that bullet went by.
So,
May I piggyback, sir, on this? May I piggyback on this comment?
Yes,
My name is Richard Marquester, and I'm gonna show you where I live, so you have it.
okay,
so before he shows you where he lives, that same bullet that he's talking about, I was outside in front of my garage replacing lights. And I heard it come right through, it had to be high powered because of the noise. And then all of a sudden, my wife runs down and says, "Hey, did you hear that? That came right in between us while we were talking in between his fence line." So, yeah, it happens. I'm not saying it happens every day, but it happens. I work from home. I can hear stray bullets buzz through the backyard, which we have 4 acres of.
what might be helpful for, and anyone in this
And-
room, what's also helpful to us as an AG's office.
Yep.
Because I've got the speaker also making inquiry on this meeting that we're having today. If you have any round that hit your concrete or anything like that, I would ask that you try to provide it
Sure.
to us.
But
But
there-
yes.
we'd have to prove that it came from there, and that's gonna be impossible. Just to add to that, that topo over there where we live, that elevation's higher than where they are at. So when I stand in my garage, his berm is like chest high to me.
And
The
see,
berm. That's supposed to
Keith?
protect us.
Write that down.
So
Maybe to visit and take a photo.
the elevation of that area is much higher than that area.
Right, we all know that the bullet trajectory goes up and then it can go down. That's what I'm concerned about,
Sure.
going down.
Yeah, this
So-
one didn't go down, he came straight across.
yep,
Right, and I'm to the left of him, further down, that
Right.
White
Well,
House there, so,
The higher elevation, you can go straight at you, but I mean, in general, the concern of the AG's office is that even though that there's a distance issue, and then anything that goes over the berm
sure,
is going to come down. That's the whole idea, like on New Year's Eve, nobody's supposed to be firing their guns up because those
Sure.
bullets are coming down.
sure, understand, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I was gonna identify my face.
Breathe down.
Yeah, this is my house. So I fired at the range many times and safe and very coordinated. But the point I wanted to make, to piggyback on this gentleman's comments, is my wife and I have been outside in our yard when the range is closed. And we've heard gunfire down there, especially on any particular holiday. And I don't know, I can't pinpoint exactly, it's in this area. I don't know who's doing it. I've told my wife, we better go back in the house because it's that close. Okay, so I know there's gunfire there on a regular basis.
Right.
And he's not open.
Thank you. Mr. Marquez, right? Sir, you're Mr. Marquez, right? Mr. Marquez? I'm sorry.
Esther?
Esther, thank you. And that's what Mr. Sablan is indicating, that it could be people within the jungle area or something discharging firearms, but that, you know, the proof is in the round and taking it as a round. But,
AJ Morning, can I just point out something with regards to these gentlemen's claims? So. You see, this is the 25-yard bay. We have a 50-yard bay here and a 100-yard rifle bay here. These are 15-foot high berms. These are 8-foot high on the side. That's another 15-foot. And the direction of shooting is this way, not this way. So I don't know how they're getting around, but it's, other than possibly coming from somewhere else. It's very easy to blame a shooting range right next to your house for all your woes about noise and stray bullets. Because we're right there, we're open to the public, very easy to blame us for it, but just a reminder, go ahead, sorry.
okay, hold on a second. If you can hold on a second, sir. What is the distance that you showed from the range to Mr. What's that, Sharpers' wife, where they were at? The 369? Okay. Ma'am, I think you were first there.
The range closes 6 p.m. on average in the evening time, and there's nights where like I'm outside in the garden or whatever, and there are gunshots going off. Locals celebrating family events, whatever it is. There are gunshots that go off in the air all the time. Like it's just a regular thing. Before the gun range was ever there, we bought the house in 2018. At the end of 2018, start of 2019, that was before the gun range opened. It was empty premises at the time. So it's always been going off even before the gun range. I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to back up Mr. Sablan's point there that I hear it all the time. And bullets going up in the air. They gotta land somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's not safe, and it's probably something else that should be addressed
Thank you.
alongside the other problems, you know what I mean? I just wanted to
And
say
I'm sorry,
that.
your name again is
Carmel
Carmel?
Hester.
Miss Hester, thank you, Carmel. Sir, you're one of the homeowners? What is your name?
My name is Jade Templo.
Mr.
Jade Templo.
Tempo?
Yes.
Templo.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I just point something out on the
Yeah.
image there? I think
that's fine.
So, I just have to say that this is got to be one of the safest ranges that you can go to. So even though you got 100-yard range, 50 and 25, it's very rare that Mr. Sablan lets you shoot it from the way back. And he does that to avoid any ricochet or rounds going above the berm. So at 25 yards, a lot of the times you would see people at 15, just so that they don't go above the berm.
You know, I have no problem with the fact that it's being operated pursuant to the rules, but accidental discharges occur. And when an accidental discharge of a high-powered velocity rifle, it's going to go straight over that berm and it's going to go onto that street.
Yeah,
So my concern right now, William, do a distance between the end of this between arguably here and there. What's the distance? Right. So you're talking about 400 yards. That's why I put that open question. Does anyone know what a 30-06 range is? What is the 30-06 range?
30-06, strength and harmony. The bullet weight is 150 to 150 meters. Will travel the distance of 3,500 yards, 3,200 meters.
Right. So
Air distance of sight with no air.
how many yards?
3,500 yards.
Right. See, Mrs. Bond, this is what I'm concerned about.
Not allowed to fire.
Yeah, but what I'm dealing with is the accidental discharge, and that round is going straight out. So there's a road clearly within the 30-06
You'll notice
range.
the 100-yard range where rifles are known to use.
Yeah.
It's near the jungle, and every shot that's being fired is going in this direction. So this area right here.
Right, I hear what you're saying.
Totally.
But the situation that we're, and I'm not here to argue with anybody. I'm just doing the what ifs. A discharge of a firearm any way around there, they try to put it in and it shoots off. It's going straight or in the direction, any direction in front of it. Right now, I just want to get some factual stuff. So
Anyone can tell you that's been there, the ROs and everybody are very well trained, they're all instructed to tell people
sure.
when to pick up the firearm. As a matter of fact, it's gotta be one of the most, I'm gonna say it's gone strictest place you can go to. You cannot walk around with your firearm with a magazine in it. You always have a chamber flag, all of those things. They think, you know, really,
Safety precautions are in
yes,
place.
precautions.
And you know, I'm not questioning that. And the fact that I've not heard of any accident occurring on your range, you know, is great. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
On that one day, they're actually a lot safer now than before the range before them.
Yeah.
Because I moved in that place in 1995, and every time I go out there to do my yard, I'll find bullets in my yard from the old range. And they used to have the old, that target range there,
Right?
so I used to find a lot of bullets in my yard. These guys are a lot safer now, but you know, like I said, I support them, but you know, it still scares me since that stray bullet went by to bring my grandkids outside for them to play outside my yard.
Right. And
So, because I don't, you know.
as government officials, my concern is that one person that gets hit, you know, the what if is a concern that at least I have at this point. So
AG Moreland, can I add something? I'm sorry, right here. Colonel Frank Flores, I'm retired Air Force Colonel, served for 25 years. This is by far the safest range I've ever been on. I take my kids to this range.
Right.
And I have been on the range at least a dozen times. I shoot a lot. And I have heard fire when I've been on the range by myself, fire off the range.
right,
At
and
least
you
a
see
dozen
this-
times.
Guys,
sir.
I know it. There's people in the jungles that are shooting things and, you know, either testing the weapons, shooting, and they're lawfully doing it. Because again, the law is 50 yards, right? So what Mr. Sablan is maybe taking the heat unfairly for are other people that are using that jungle area to hunt whatever boars or pigs or whatever.
In my 30 years, I've never seen a safer range. On duty, off duty, this is the safest range I've ever been on.
Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add something.
Ma'am, your name is?
My name is Taylor Swan. I'm the daughter of Purple.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add something. It's going to be pretty much the safety of the shooting range. Our safety measures that we take to ensure that the bullets do stay in, as well as in conjunction with the actual trajectory of the bullet. Mr. Mark McCuslin did mention, as you asked for the projectile 30-06, he did mention the FPS for that. I believe he said it was in the thousands, if I'm not mistaken. We did measure it at 400, and I also want to mention that on our 100-yard, if you've never been to the range before, our operations on the 100-yard specifically, you can see a canopy there. We do not allow anybody to shoot their firearm not benched. It's either prone or benched. It's controlled. There is a safety, what do you call it? A chamber flag always in place when the firearm is not in use. And we always have a range safety officer walking back and forth on that range, so long as there's just one person and we make these custom chamber flags as a higher visual. It's neon color. And basically we ensure that the guns are always flagged. And if it's not in use, and when the customer is shooting the firearm, it is always benched. And our RSOs who are here today, they always attest that the barrel is leveled. It is not higher, and they will call it out. And in terms of that, if a bullet, in theory, if a bullet was to go over the back berm with the trajectory of a 30-06, the bullet would very much surpass the 400 yards. So I just want to, it would go way past that. You would have to scroll down further on the map.
Pull out more.
It end up at mobile, Route 1, mobile.
We'll have someone in the next village complaining about
This
the
is kind of
bullet.
like what I was worried about. Pull out more, William. You're talking a whole subdivision behind there.
Yes, understood. But the people complaining of bullets in the area,
Right.
it's
I got you.
way off trajectory of the bullets coming in our
Again,
direction, from our range.
Somebody can correct me, and I'm sure there's a lot of experts out there. PD shooting range, I don't think they allowed long rifles there.
They allow everything. They allow 50 cal, we don't allow 50 cal.
Okay. You know. Yes, sir.
My name is Dwayne Guerrero. I'm a former employee of, Jake. For that 30, yacht 6, in order for that trajectory to travel the 3,500 yards, the rifle needs to be at 45 degrees. There is no way a rifle shooter there will be shooting at 45
Well,
degrees.
guys, I said it, accidental discharge.
And
You're
also,
loading it and somebody just yanks the thing and then puts the trigger off, it's going out. That's all I'm saying.
and also there behind that 100-yard range, there is trees that are taller than the bird. The big trees are, we're talking about more than 8 inches wide. So before any bullets can pass that, it's going to hit a grass. And then that will stop the bullet from traveling its maximum distance.
Thank you. Sir, what is your name?
Dwayne Guerrero.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero.
So yeah, just to add to that, the trees that he's talking about is on our property. And on private property. The buffer zone is not lot 195 or whatever this legal is.
Mr. Charpers,
Yes, sir.
where exactly is your property, if I may?
I would
inquire?
love to identify it.
So just so everybody knows, this is not about the Second Amendment right? This is about a 40-year-old variance that somebody waived, and I wish we were afforded this, meeting, before he even applied for it, or
What year did you purchase your house, sir?
1990, and this place was dormant.
It was open in 1982.
This place was dormant in 1990,
Right, see,
1995.
we'll develop with that.
I'll give you 20 years.
Right.
You
So-
cannot waive a variance in front of whoever and say, I'm gonna open a gun range.
Right, see, that's why the legal mind's gotta get involved here, because it is a 40-year-old.
That's all I'm saying.
Right.
If I want to do the same business in 2 months, they're gonna put me through the ring.
Right, I got you, Mr. Charpers. Where's your house here?
Here's our house.
Okay,
Mind you, this is elevated. There's dog property here. I've been down here, we fence line here, it's about gated. I've heard bullets whiz above me. On a calm day, I've heard bullets come through here when it's wet, you can hear the water dripping. I'm not saying it happens every day, and I'm not saying your place isn't safe. I'm just saying accidents happen, and this is private
so,
property.
do you own 2 houses on that? Is that 1 house only?
My mom's here,
Okay,
my house,
okay,
on that lot, this lot, all the way to here.
very good.
Yeah, but if it's all down, after you guys declare it, because we don't own that, it's possible you can get bullets there, it's possible. That's the thing that happens, accidents do happen. If we bring this up a little bit, you don't mind?
Pull it out, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Pull it back? No, pull out, pull out.
I want to point out this school, this has been a guy in school. I'd like to measure this to there.
Do the measurement.
How about the measurement from GCC's range to the classrooms?
All I'm getting at here.
Right, you see,
is this lot
GCC doesn't use long rifles, right? They don't
is
have.
for school.
Still has the range.
I will never know there's an active shooter situation going on. Because it is very evident that you can hear your business. And I'm not saying. I hunted in the same mission here, right? I don't hunt. All I'm saying is this process has been done back in 2018. Where we vetted this 4-year-old variance and said, hey, this is a ag zone, it's a pocket of the land change. Here, and now you want to come in with something. That's all I wanted.
Mr. Chakras, first of all, I'm happy to meet you today. Sorry it's under these circumstances, but I want you to know that we did everything in our power or everything that we had to do, right? The government afforded this to us. The government, we met all the requirements. The government gave us the green light.
And in this day and age, the critical thinking was wrong. When he said a 4-year variance can supersede the people here. You cannot tell the school, the students there cannot tell there's an active shooter going on.
Thank you, Mr. Charpers.
And
So we have,
This is about the application.
right, well, hold on, sir.
This is about an application that was
the-
never looked at.
Properly, when you're waiving a 40-year-old variance in front of the business people, the licensing people, BLM, DPW. And this is what it's about. That's what it is about. for me.
Understood.
I'm not scrutinizing his business
Right.
or its safety.
So
But I'm
based,
telling you, it can happen and has, and I've witnessed it.
based on the, at least the Google information, it's 893 yards from the, shooting range to the school. Okay,
When we went for this business venture in 2018, all the government agency or government officials that we talked to, attorneys, consultants, they said this variance or conditional use, I don't know the difference between the terms, but they said this is good to go. It never expires. As a matter of fact, Mr. Joe Borja's legal counsel in 2020, when I was meeting with him, along with a colleague, friend of mine, Mark Sablan, stated that his legal counsel agreed that this conditional permit or use does not expire. And Mr. Sablan has every right to be on that property.
and that's, before we go there, that's the question I had. There's no limitation on this, right? That you're aware of, Mr.
No, the variance or conditional use goes with the land.
Okay, very good. So we'll make that clear. That was a concern that I had, and I see no restriction on the duration on that issue. Senator Camacho.
Thank you, General Boylan. I have been patronizing John's facility for almost 2 years. And I shoot pistols, I have shotguns, I have rifles. The 100-yard range, when I go out and I experience, and I want to reiterate what his daughter Taylor, co-owner of the range, had mentioned, is that we are required to sit at a table and to set up our rifles with a flag in it. So we're not standing there, we're not pointing it up in the air, we're not doing anything. The alternative to that is actually to lay on the ground prone and shoot at the target. The target is 100 yards away. The trajectory in shooting from a prone position or at a bench at 100 yards, that bullet is not going to climb, as you mentioned. It's going to pretty much begin to climb, but it won't climb over the berm, which is 15 feet high.
So what prevents, I had a pointer here. You've got a rifle, okay? You're on the table.
You're trying to hit a target.
No.
Go ahead and
You're-
finish, I'm sorry.
You're in the process of loading the round. Person jerks it, and the thing's there, and starts to angle it above the berm. That's what I'm concerned about, just because
No, you're using your sight
is there
to point at the target.
in the,
And though that it's chambered and you may have moved the position, you're still going to adjust it at the end
Well,
to
you're-
ensure that your sight is pointed towards the target. And nowadays we have red dots, we have scopes,
is
we
there-
have all these
is there a
to make it
cable?
more accurate because we want to hit the middle of the bullseye.
I got you, Senator, but is there a cable that's holding the front end of that rifle to prevent it from being jerked up?
There are bipods
Yeah, I don't.
that the rifle is
You're
attached
using that,
to.
but again, it's chambered around person, because you're bringing in non-experienced individuals like tourists, right? The Japanese tourist goes in there and then they're doing that, and then for whatever reason, they jerk back and then fire that round. It's gonna go over the berm.
I don't think that, I mean, that's,
In the shooting ranges in Tumon, they used to have the cables attached to the front of the barrel to prevent any jerking, or I think some of them were actually trying to kill themselves too. But I mean, the idea is to prevent that what if situation. We're not dealing with the expertise that we apparently have in the room, as well as Mr. Sablan here and yourself, Senator.
I don't
dealing
think
with
we can
people that
design
don't
it
know how to
for
use
every anomaly. We cannot.
But
But
this is,
the range officer is there standing beside the person that's pulling the trigger to shoot the bullet towards the target.
Gotcha.
The objective is to shoot the bullet to the middle of the target. And even if there's a jerk, sometimes people get a little startled
right.
at the pull of the trigger. But if there's a jerk and a motion prior to pulling the trigger, they're going to go back and adjust it to ensure that their sight is
No, I got
focused
you.
on the target.
But you see, that's why I'm pointing out the distance range is within a subdivision in that school.
But my point again, lane prone, at the bench. Very little chance that somebody's gonna, as you mentioned, jerk it and have it go up and shoot.
Right. So you
And we
guys should
can't, we
also
can't account
realize
for that.
my position here, I'm not a policymaker, okay? What they did in 1982, I cannot question what they did back then. If Mr. Sablon is entitled to his license based upon the conditional permit and the variance that was given, then it's not within our realm to stop it.
And that's
So-
exactly what
Right.
that's what this whole thing is
Can
about.
I- go-
Safety is
I wanna
one thing,
finish,
but
'cause I gotta go.
does it, while you're figuring out whether the 1982 law is valid or whatever, why am I stopping, why are you guys stopping my business?
The reason why we're stopping it is because there's a school there and there's a road there and there's a subdivision there. That I can see and I didn't stop it. These individuals, out of an abundance of caution for the safety of our community, did what they did, and that's why I'm involved, because if it's a license and you're entitled to it, I'm gonna stand with you on that, and it's gonna be up to the Guam Land Use Commission and the senators to do something about it.
Then, yeah,
So-
and Mr. Chuffers is correct that in 2018, before I put over $1 million into this business, you should have told me, we can't do it. That's the
General,
problem.
I just want to finish because I have to leave.
Yes, sir.
I feel it's an injustice for the government to stop his operation. They could continue his operation and continue to look into how to resolve it, because the guy is losing money. His employees are here.
I got
It's
you.
not fair.
And
And
that's why I'm here.
ultimately, maybe the government should think long-term, and Joe, you know me, I'm a very land-oriented person. In the legislature, I had oversight of land. I worked going before the Land Use Commission, for a private firm. I had oversight of land management, Chamorro Land Trust, all of that. I think it's time that we think about an area where we can permit a facility like this without having to go through all the hoops
Gotcha.
and having it rescinded later on, because you have an illegal taking. If the guy has done everything possible to meet the law, maybe minor things that have to go back and he has to fix a temporary structure that may not have been permitted. We can resolve
I
that.
never doubted that.
We can resolve that.
Well, we have one red flag right now, and that's the fence, the barbed wire fence
Yeah.
isn't erected.
But
So,
that, but
you know,
that's not
that
for the
in itself-
bullets.
No, that in itself can stop the land use.
But that's
being
not for the
produced.
bullets that
No,
they're complaining about.
But Senator, you realize I'm going by the Bible, which is what 1982 said. You shall have 4 conditions. There's
I get it.
already one that's saying, well,
They can comply, but don't take away their license
no,
right
but you
away.
can't issue the license, because the reason why they have a barbed wire fence is to prevent those kids from jumping over and trying to go and accidentally getting shot. You know, I don't want to over dramatize this,
Yeah.
but I can see why the Land Use Commission said that in 82 will allow it, but they want to create a area so that no kids or anyone else gets in the line of fire accidentally. I
What
get it.
happens when a typhoon comes and all the barbed wire comes off?
Like the rest of us, we got to fix it.
So
Are they gonna shut them down?
Yes. Yes, I would endorse a shutdown if there's no barbed wire up. I don't want to be responsible for some child in that neighborhood that's to the left of that thing, or right of it, going and walking over because there's no barbed wire fence, or
Okay,
kids
my
during the
last
summer
words, my
jumping
last
it.
words is, I support his operation. It gives me personally, I used to shoot in the jungle on my
Right.
property, but it gives me an opportunity to go out and perform my training safely. I just went through another course where I paid money to have instructors teach me
Yes.
how to operate my firearms safely. And I appreciate the fact that he's there, and I look forward to getting there as soon as possible and having all my friends.
John is the
Back to
only
work.
one that has a legitimate shooting range on Guam right now.
Yeah,
And
Thank you.
in my opinion, we need it.
we need it.
Okay.
Good.
But how we do it, I also have the responsibility, as do everybody else, and I'm sure all of you as well. We just don't want anybody hurt. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing.
I'm,
So
I'm just
let-
thinking, hoping again that Reverend Tax can extend for a period of time such that he will comply with the barbed wire.
So the
And-
problem is complying with the barbed wire. These guys have visited my property since 2018 at least 3 times.
Yeah, but Mr. Sablon, they put in the license had to be recertified,
Right.
re-inspected.
So,
So let's
Okay.
move on from there.
I can-
I understand where you're coming from, okay?
Sir,
Thank you, Senator.
thank you,
sir,
sir.
quickly,
Sir,
I gotta leave. The other thing that he brought up was the noise. Ever since the typhoon, after the typhoon, now we could really hear your gun range
Sure.
and the metal being hit. So even my grandkids are out there asking, what is that noise? So, it scares them to be outside because you really hear that metal when the bullet gets hit.
Yeah.
Look at the distance between your range and my house, and I could really hear
Right,
that thing
right.
now since the typhoon is.
Yeah, I don't dispute that. I don't,
Yeah.
the gunfire is loud. It's a shooting range. We are gonna have noise. That's the bottom line.
And
There can be mitigating, things that we can do to mitigate that, situation, but it's over time, and there's actually zero legal requirement to do anything. It's not in the
people are
books.
trying to sleep with during the weekend. We can't sleep because you guys start early in the morning with your.
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
gun range.
no
So
matter what.
I
I mean,
will say this-
I can start at 6 p.m. and go until 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then you
guys,
won't be able to sleep in the night.
I will say this, Mr. I'm not here for noise ordinances, okay? I'm mainly here to resolve this issue on getting the license to you if you're entitled to it. And giving the proper advice to our government officials who have their own rights to proceed, because they're the experts in their areas. Before we go over there, I wanted to touch something before we continue with the input. Joe, you said that there's options. And this is not saying that we're not going to issue it, but I just want to get everything on the table so we understand some of the full scope, beginning to end. What are the options that you mentioned?
First of all, I would just want to mention that there is a personal factor in this for me. Several years ago, several decades ago, in 1980, a dear friend of mine got killed actually by a stray bullet in the area. Now, did it come from the shooting range? Well, I don't know. Did it come from a hunter? I don't know. I don't want, in the interest of privacy, to name that situation, but I will give it to you personally on that. Secondly, on this issue with liability, I just got a call last week from a constituent in Barrigada whose house got flooded. And he wants to know what land management is going to do to mitigate his flooding because we approved his map. So even though that's just a property factor, I certainly don't want to be the director when a situation occurs like that, I support Mr. Sablan's, believe it or not, Mr. Sablan, I support your function. You are the only gun range up there. You may be shaking your head, but I do have a liability and I do have a obligation to
Yeah.
maintain the law.
Respectfully,
this-
sir, I've been trying to get a meeting with you for months and I never got a return call. Darlene, your secretary, has taken my number, my emails,
Mr.
If
Sublime,
we
you work
had
for the
this-
government, right?
and I work for the
I work
government.
for the government.
I have
I
better
work for the
customer
government.
service, trust me.
Let's talk after this, okay? But I can't say I'm the best at customer service either. So,
I'll continue, Attorney General,
options, we're really
Yeah.
focusing.
I don't have any malice to Mr. Sablan. Some of my family members and my best friends are out there at the shooting range almost every other Saturday and Sunday. I receive on average 3 phone calls from your supporters on there. But this thing about not getting back to you is when this option came up, this request, this license application came up, we actually wanted to wait with our legal counsel's advice, and you got to meet the legal counsel on it. Suggested solutions, they're all uphill, Attorney General, as you know, solutions like this are not easy. This type of business is more compatible in an M2 heavy industrial zone where land uses involving, quote, obnoxious or offensive by reason of odor, dust, smoke, noise, gas fumes, cinders, vibration, or water carried waste are permitted uses in an M2 zone. For reference purposes, Attorney General, all residential uses are conditional use in an M2 zone. Another reference, all temporary workforce housing states that the GLUC shall not approve any workforce housing development in any zoning area other than an M1. So the uses in an M1 industrial zone could vary from conditional use for residential, or it could and also approve and involve businesses that have water carried waste or
Right,
noise.
Joe, real quick. For a shooting range, is there anything in the code that specifically identifies a zone for a shooting range? It doesn't spell out,
No, it
this is see, the danger with all this analysis is we get it, heavy industrial, heavy industrial zones, you've got smells, you've got noise, you've got that type of use, but you don't have bullets coming out of it. So that's probably why they had to back in 82, get a variance to an existing, zone. So other options.
These suggested solutions, and these are all out of my control. I'll probably get hit in the media for this or from the activists, but I would suggest that we relocate the firing range to a Chamorro Land Trust lease near or on the raceway parcel.
This is, John, to be very frank with you, we're trying to find a solution as well. And I want to know
I'm open to
who's
all of
the-
that. I'm open to.
And I've
I'm not-
spoken to Mr.
He
Sablan. on
mentioned
that.
it, and he did say it's out of
That's
his
what I was
control, but
considering too. We've got Chamorro Land Trust property. Who's the senator with oversight? Who's the chairman?
Speaker, Therese Lahi.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she
No,
sent
yeah.
me a,
but Attorney General, in the meantime, that's gonna take a long time, probably a couple of years.
Oh,
let us.
Am I
let
gonna
us-
be shut down that long?
Right, let us go to step one first, which is let us look at the law, look at the facts and see what we can do to mitigate what you're experiencing right now.
Perfect,
Okay.
but in the meantime, because I know you're not gonna come up with a solution tomorrow. And I need to pay my employees. We have 2 businesses and 3 instructors that utilize our range to pay taxes. So we got Mr. Suzuki, I don't know if he's still here, from Guam Outdoor Shooting Range, that just canceled over 50 customers this weekend, all from Japan.
Mayor, can you please sit at the table? From Japan, okay, you got
All
the
from,
businesses going.
yeah, all from Japan.
No, I got you.
That's
And
just one.
This helps our economy because you're providing a service that they
Right.
don't have in Japan.
So while
I get it.
we sit at this table and try and figure out what's the best place for Sportland shooting range, I don't mind talking about those options, but I still need to be open,
Understood.
that's the bottom line.
A couple more items, Attorney General. The area around the raceway parcel is bordered by Route 15, 2 quarries, and a conservation area. Number 2, the lease application can be made directly to the CLTC for property that has been designated as commercial by the CLTC. And I understand John's concern, an act of Congress, takes a while. Number 3, the lease application can be made directly to the legislature for a legislative lease. I'm sorry, Senator Camacho's not here. Examples, the Chamorro Land Trust Golf Course, the
Right.
Fisheye Marine Park,
Well, the senators can fully dispose of any property that they.
Hamley, Molesto Submerged Lands Lease, Trans World Radio, a religious radio station, and specifically GAIN, who the government provides property for dogs and cats.
Right.
And believe me, Attorney General and John, the last thing I want to do is shut down a thriving business.
Right.
However, on the other side, my primary responsibility as director is safety for the,
Right, I think for all, we government officials, we all have the concern. You're
Myself
law
included,
enforcement, Right, you're law enforcement,
I'm a firefighter,
exact law enforcement.
yes.
So, okay. Other option?
it's a pretty short option other
No,
than,
no, this is the right legal framework that you're looking at, and you have the speaker's attention. But she sent me materials last night, and I invited her to this, gathering, but I think they may be in session or they were scheduled to go into session.
Sure.
Mayor, did you have something you wanted to, contribute?
Thank you. I'm Melissa Tavares, Mayor of Denido. We've actually visited with our municipal planning council, Mr. Sablan's range. We actually went into the neighborhoods as well. We went to Mr. Charterson's property. We went to Ironwood. And of course, the sound is a concern. Also to the left, if you're on Mr. Sablan's range, it's a very safe range. However, when you're on it, we usually have Department of Public Health outreaches in the area. If you're on the range, the area on the right side where that fence is, he actually has a fence up there, but, and it protects the people from going in and out. But the community that's there are, COFA migrants who have purchased property. And Mr. Sablan and Taylor has actually explained to us that they've had people climb that fence when they're intoxicated and coming into their range. Other things is one of the two of the COFA families that live there actually have their children working in public safety at this point. They're police officers, one is a marshal, but they raise their families there. And of course, like all the other neighborhoods, the concern are the stray bullets. I hear this is an area where back in 1982, it was all agricultural. People raised their cows and pigs in that area and farmed the area. Vince Munoz, who lives in the neighborhood, is unable to be here today, but he did express that with me this morning that his concern is now that he and his wife live in the area, they hear a lot of the noise, but they don't have young children, and they do feel for the families that are there with the young children, like Mr. Gumabuan mentioned earlier, he can't let his grandchildren run around outside. But since 1982, Ironwood Development, they have 4 phases.
Where's Iron?
They're in the area, they're right off Chalanamasu. So that big, right on the right side, that large community there, that one, and then
That's Ironwood?
Yes, and then to the left of it, to the right of it as well. There's 4 phases there. Those are housing areas.
Low income, or
It's affordable
yeah,
housing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a 60-40 affordable housing rate
right.
area. And then the Machanal subdivision. Fern Terrace was there prior to 1982. However, of course, the concerns with the neighbors are the sound. I think Mr. Gumabuan, the Kadzin Jose is the closest to where the berms are at. So
Where would
you
that
know,
be? Zoom in?
the berm from the firing range, right there, right there.
At the end of it?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah. So, it's a community, of course, like you said, our concern is the safety of the families that live there. Those families did not live there in 1982. Those housing developments were not there.
Right, and this
In
is why
1982.
Mr. Sablan's statement
Mm.
that they came to the nuisance, 'cause in the law, they call this like a nuisance because it's affecting people around them. When you come to the nuisance, there's a body of law that addresses that it's like they've taken the responsibility of moving in there. On the other side, there's limits to that because those people around there, they have certain rights, as we all do, to use their property, to be able to sell it without diminishing in value, stuff like that. That's why I've got the lawyers here, okay? We're gonna be looking at that, and I'm sorry, Mayor, we were discussing that before you came in.
Yes, I was here, I was listening to the discussion.
Very good.
We've actually, with the Municipal Planning Council, actually visited the range. We visited the neighborhood. We were with Mr. Chartras
Very
the
good.
same day. Taylor actually came out and met with us at the area. They don't start until 9 o'clock. We were there before 9, so we didn't hear too many gunshots at the time. But when we went in and saw the operations, we actually saw how safe it was. But like I said, the families who moved in after, remember that the range was dormant. It wasn't operating
It sounds that way.
until the late right before 2020 or 2018.
Right.
So, the families were okay. They moved in, they didn't hear all that. And if you hear gunshots, strays, it's because the hunters are across the street.
In the boonies?
They're in the boonies. Northwest Field is across.
By the way, what type of animal are in there? Are they
Pig
hunting
and
deer?
deer. There's
Pig and deer.
pig and deer. Currently, we're working with USDA to do a pig trap.
And they
It's a
can
feral pig.
legitimately, there's no restrictions on hunting season in there or anything?
It shouldn't be out in the neighborhood, but
Yeah,
they're,
but in
you
the
know,
jungle area that's next to it. right?
Well, you have Camp Laws across the street,
Okay,
so.
so,
But, we're in support of the business. As a matter of fact, I've been going up and down that area because since the typhoon, there are several homes that were damaged and we're putting them on the different programs for repair. And one particular family is because the patient is on dialysis and we just need to make sure that she's safely at home, but we've been driving up and down the range. I noticed that now it's just the retail part of the store, the operation that's open. That's where customers, we know that the range is closed. You know, I've spoken to Celine and Mr. Borja about this a couple of years ago. But of course, you know, they were not in that portion where they had to sign off at the time.
Very good, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you for, you basically did a preliminary investigation on a lot of these things and outreach. I'm gonna make this also clear, Mr. Sablan, that part of this equation, and I'm not gonna sidestep the fact that we need to do our work in the AG's office to figure out the legal rights that are involved here, the government's rights, your rights, and so forth. But I also intend, if this doesn't go the way that you may wish it to go, to see if we can find an actual solution like Mr. Borja was mentioning. We've got the speaker, which is an elected, head of the legislature, the speaker. We've got Mayor Savares, another elected leader here. I'll commit to you that we will find a solution, may not be the exact solution you want.
Sure.
Question, who owns the property that you're on? Do you guys own it as a corporation? Has it been paid off with?
No, it's owned by Miss Teresita Munoz Santos, who is a resident of California, I believe.
I heard that was all Munoz property
It
at one
is
point.
her,
back in the 80s?
her mother was the Munoz. And so anyway, she's been in California she's probably
When does
most
the
of her
lease
life.
end, if I may inquire?
2042,
Just long term, right?
right?
I believe it belonged to her father, former Major Ben Munoz.
And that's how they used it for a shooting
The
range.
shooting
leased
range,
it to
right?
him
He
back
used to
then.
bring tourists up there to fire the Thompson 45 machine guns.
So, okay, sir, you've been raising your hand.
Yeah.
What is your name, if I may?
I live the closest that.
You're Mr. Charpers' son?
Brother.
Brother?
Yeah.
You want to point out? Lori, just follow her. Mr. Charpers, can you use the mic behind you?
Okay, this is a shooting range, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is my family's property. Okay, my house is right here. We own all this land here, okay? So what happens if straight bullet comes and hits me and I die? Who's responsible? That's what I want to know.
Right.
I mean, I got a lot of, I got a couple of bullets that I found in the ground or on the tree, directly coming over and the fence, then the wall behind that or behind the berm was built by my father.
Okay. But the statements, be seated, sir. The statements that they're saying is that the safest place probably there is behind that berm. Because there's no way that the bullet's gonna go through the ground. It's the ones that might go over is the danger, but I'm not belittling what you're saying, because you're saying that there's stuff actually going over. Yeah, I got you with your brother, right? Sir, Mr. Frank, you're his brother?
Correct.
Great, good. Ma'am,
Sir, I just would like to say in your decision making, while you're making your decision, I understand that you're concerned that nobody gets hurt because of the shooting range. While you're making those decisions, please also consider the people that will get hurt.
yes, ma'am.
Because-
If I may, what is your name?
My name is Lisa
Lisa.
Luzinko. Yeah.
Thank you. Go on.
While you're making the decisions on keeping the people of Guam safe, making sure that no one gets hurt because of the shooting range, please also consider the people who might get hurt because we do not have a shooting range.
Exactly.
Okay, you guys probably know the most the crime rate on Guam, the severe crime rate on women, okay? The high number of women who are prey because we don't have a means to protect ourselves. This shooting range provides a safe environment for people like me
Agreed.
to practice proper
Learn how to
gun
properly
handling.
use your firearm.
Yes,
Yeah,
and now
protect
without that, what happens to me if an intruder comes in and I die? Who's going to protect me? So please consider that when you're worried about, people
Worried
that
about-
might get hurt because of the range being open. Think about the people who might get hurt because the range is closed.
Right.
Because I do not have a way to practice. And if an intruder comes in and tries to harm me, what happens? Who protects me? The violent crime rate against women, domestic abuse, rape, murder on women, because we don't have a place to go to practice this. Please consider that as well.
Very
Thank
well
you.
stated, Lisa. And I will say that I agree that it is important to know how to use your firearm. And everybody that's going to your firearm, Mr. Sablan's firearm, those are the type of people that support this office because they are the law-abiding ones. The ones that are buying them illegally, that are making those firearms or using them against us, don't go to Mr. Sablan's firing range. I think that's a pretty safe statement to say. So you're speaking to the choir to a certain extent here. I got to make sure and our, exactly. And this is a country built on democracy and capitalism. So I'm not one to try to ruin businesses, okay? And you guys know my grandfather was the only ATF licensed firearm dealer on Guam for the longest time. So you're speaking to a guy that was shooting when I was probably 8 years old and above. You know, my job as AG is to keep you guys safe and also to balance all these other issues and to work a solution. At the end of the equation, we're going to have to find a solution. If this legal opinion cannot give Mr. Sablan what he needs to operate his business, or if a senator comes in and tries to affect your license, or the land management does anything that they're going to revoke that conditional permit, we will try to find you a solution. And I think Mr. Borja is already indicating, you know, there's options out there. Okay. Sir, if you can identify yourself.
My name is Mark Sablan,
Mr. Sablan.
and I'm a friend of John for quite a few years. I'm here on my own behalf. I support John 100%. I'm a customer of his, and I've been with him on this journey quite a while. And I can attest to everything that he's indicated in his time on the mic. I have to be out of here by 11:30 because I have an appointment at Camp Laws, but I've heard all the safety issues, and believe me, in the industry I come from, safety is priority, number one, okay? So we've all addressed that. You've taken notes on it, and everyone here seems to be on the same boat. The thing I disagree is that John has already been impacted by the closure. What are we going to do about John's well-being, his family? I mean, that's his bread and butter aside from his job as captain at Guam Fire Department. Who's going to pay for the relocation? I know the solutions are good, and Joe, thank you for that. But we all know this takes time. I've done them in Guam all my life, except for the time I went to the States for school. I've been a banker. I've been in private business. I have not worked for the government of Guam. So returning phone calls, bad service. I mean, if that happened at my place of employment, you'll be reprimanded. Especially if your job is dealing with people, okay? I mean, I don't want to go on and on about seminars and things like that about customer service, but the damage has been done. The damage has been done. So the way I read this, and with all due respect, Attorney General Moylan, John is sitting here, and I know he wants to say this, but if I were in his shoes right now, I would be probably a little bit tongue-tied because of the number of people are in here. And I know a lot of people in here. A lot of these people in here are my friends or friends of my family. All that John is asking is, since the damage is done, why can't you let him operate on a temporary basis until we get this resolved? Because you and me know it's not going to happen
Well
next
spoken,
month.
Mr. Sablan. That's on my notes right now.
Okay,
Mr. Sablan has asked for a temporary, permission to use it. That is on my notes.
okay.
It's to mitigate the injury to him as we go through this process. The government, as you probably have seen, either federal or local, we do not move that quickly, but I'm trying to move it as fast as we can.
Okay.
Hence, we're being here today.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in closing, I just want to thank everyone for coming here today to support Mr. John Sablan and his family. They are a good family. I've been a gun enthusiast like you since I was that big. My father was an avid shooter and hunter and fisherman and all that. And all I ask today is that everyone in this room think about everything that was said, okay? And as far as the residential owners, I mean, I have full faith that the Attorney General and Gov Guam will come to a solution, a mutual solution, but in the same time, please help a small businessman, an Air Force vet, a public servant, and a family man. Please help this small businessman survive. You cannot just shut him down and, hey, where's my next dollar coming from? I've got the bank to pay, I've got utilities to pay.
I've got to pay my people, I've got to survive.
Right.
Okay, so with that said, gotta go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sablan. Yes.
My name is Mario Garcia. I support Mr. Sablan. Couple of things I wanted to bring out, and it goes to your platform of workflow. What happens first, the occupancy permit or the business permit? Because in both, I believe government agencies, regulatory agencies have to sign off for his business to occupy the land, part one, and two, to perform the business. So we need to look at that in his workflow process. Okay? Number two, I've heard noise. I also remember and recall Mr. Sablan testifying on bill, what is it, 76-33 for the suppressor law. So maybe in his mind's eyes, if he got that approved, it may quelch the noise concerns to the community. That's one. But inside of that, of the people here complaining about noise, how many attested to the bill to support him and the business so they could put suppressors to reduce the noise to their facilities, their home? Third, typhoon. Natural vegetation is a natural barrier to help reduce, mitigate noise. Great. Typhoon Mawar occurred. What did I hear? More noise has occurred since the natural barrier was removed. That happened. So what is the corrective course for that? Suppressors, grow new trees. Is that his responsibility? The government's whose responsibility is to grow new trees to help with that
I
sound?
think the typhoon is already, I saw 2 months back, it grew back. This is Guam. So, yeah, the typhoon did rip, especially in Dededo, as the mayor knows. The whole thing was like a war zone, a nuclear blast. I don't know if people noticed that Jigo Dededo. That's why that was a super typhoon. I'll argue with anybody. I was out there at 12 o'clock. But the vegetation based on Google looks like it's come back. The suppression that you get from the vegetation, it's come back. I don't want to touch that suppression, the other one, because that's a different type of issue on the firearm. So, well spoken, sir.
I want to go back to the occupancy on the inspection, because prior before him doing that, the regulatory agency at that moment, prior before him opening his business, had the
Inspected it.
authority to address the issue that is being addressed today.
Right.
So if they gave him an occupation permit and a business permit to do business, why are they stopping him
Right.
now?
See, this is that balance you're saying. They gave it to them. They should be locked into place and they should give it to him again. If it wasn't because of the danger of what's going on, and I think that they, out of an abundance of caution, our government departments said, put the brakes on it. I'm here now to assist with providing legal guidance. We're going to find something that hopefully everybody's going to be okay with. Okay.
And something I did share with John regarding frags and bullets. Proof is in the pudding. For me, tangible data. Can you show me the ammo? Because when I do my yard work, and I was teasing him, when I do my yard work, I come across ammo, bullets on the ground. Near me, about 400 yards away, is the last battle of Jigo, where I live. So did I say that the last battle of Jigo is the one that put the balls of ammo in my yard? Or is it the Christmas Eve or the New Year's Eve? All those shooters for the last, 50 years have been shooting, put it in my yard. It doesn't sell for me that these ammos and,
Right.
based on trajectory,
Right.
are sitting in certain properties based on the alignment of how they operate their range. However, I would be cautious to say that we don't know a direction of a ricochet.
You've got causation questions here. You've got the history of that area there, and I agree with you. There's rounds all over Guam based on the war. But you also have live testimony from people. This is the stuff that the Guam Land Use Commission normally sits like we're sitting right now. They consider all those factors and then they either grant the variance or they may try to take it back or something. I'm trying not to get to that point where the Guam Land Use Commission has to say that we're going to take it back, because that's not going to help him. It's not going to be satisfactory to most of the people in this room. And quite frankly, it would not be satisfactory to me as an attorney general. That's why we're looking at all the options. And you've got 2 people here, the directors of 2 of the most important government departments on Guam, that are looking at giving the history of what's going on, because we're talking 40 years of history here, and then trying to help us come out to a legal conclusion and then find a solution. Even if the legal conclusion isn't palatable, we don't need to go to court. That's the
Right.
bottom line here. So
My last comment about Route 15 and Tomorrow Land Trust land in the back. The government of Guam, the people of the island, had fought against the final environmental impact statement of putting a firing range out there. And now, because of this situation, the government of Guam will move to put a firing range out there. How does it look to us? A people, our culture, our ideas and our thinking that we would fight Uncle Sam, but we can't fight ourselves for the same thing. What are we doing? Because once you open a range out there, does it open up 50 caliber? Yes, it does. What was one of the major instruments that the military was looking for? 50 caliber. So
right.
that's what I wanted. Oh, and because the occupancy permit was already issued in business, if they did that before they brought up the issue with barbed wire, didn't the government fail its fiduciary duty?
Well, again, you guys you're speaking to the choir to a certain extent. The government's not perfect. We know the government's not perfect, but what do? The rule is there that it must have that fencing and it must have the barbed wire. Just because it's 40 years old doesn't take it away from the 4 conditions, right? So I think we're all in the same, every gun shooter that I know, especially in this room right now, you guys are all for safe gun operation. You know, that you guys always start off your comments with that. I start off with that as well. The balance right now is he's got a business. There's a potential for unsafe, what might be happening. We can't come to that conclusion right now, but we can deal with the facts as we see them and then put it to the law, punch it in. I can tell you right now, I'm not really finding, the court will not agree that just because for this 2 years ago, they approved his business license, that they must issue it now, despite anything, these things. The court's going to be analyzing it the way we're analyzing it. Is someone going to get hurt? Is that school going to have a round go into it? Is the Charfers' family's going to be hurt? Stuff like that. So we got a lot of concerns. Now we got to focus it on what are his rights, what are the government's responsibilities, and then come up to the options if we can't give Mr. Sablan what he needs to have.
Also provide an option. Can we make a recommendation as an
Yes.
option? If it is given limited, that the 100-yard be temporary held,
I'm sorry, what? The what?
the 100-yard, because it seems to be 308 and the higher grain seems to be an issue of overreach, that be held until there's more evidence and then the other bays continue to move
Right now,
forward.
I got a big red flag on a long rifle. The pistols, I don't think that they're gonna go that far, but let's just say that this is all a work in progress. We're gonna consider everything, and I will be having a conversation with you, Mr. Sablan. My chief deputy keeps telling me that there's a gentleman back there that, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
What is your name?
My name is Kyle Reese. I've certified a couple of ranges before, and I've also helped build one. We're using not complete information here. So the height of a berm is not what's important, it's the angle. So it's based on the distance. The closer you walk to a wall, the sharper of an angle you have to get over that wall. There's an angle set and decided, and that's what determines the height. We've also assumed agreement that there's hazard coming from this range. No, there's not. There's a possibility of a hazard the same way there's a possibility of me getting hit by a car tomorrow. The safe operation of the range is what's most important. These 3 range officers, you're worried about a negligent discharge. John is not responsible for a negligent discharge any more than he is of me having one at my house. But he has controls in place, his RSOs. If I have a negligent discharge, I'm packing up and leaving. I'm gone. I'm off the range because I failed to follow the rules. Then they have to do a follow-up to try to figure out where that round could have gone, to follow up on the back end to see who could be affected. Everything he does is more than he's required to do. Everything he does is for everybody that's there, but also the sport. And to ask him to do something that's a 1 in a million type non-zero possibility, what if that one negligent discharge is at the perfect 45-degree angle for a round to go? It's only going to be one because that person's gone. I could do that from my house because I don't have a range. Maybe I'm dinking around in my backyard and pop, there goes a round.
Right.
That's not John's fault. For these rounds that we're finding out here, it's not up to John to prove that they didn't come from his range. That's not fair. And we've just assumed that that hazard is there and it exists. We're not giving it the proper percentage of likelihood, which is near zero. That's not to his discredit. So when we assume that agreement, we also reduce down to absurd correlations like what if. Anything that starts with what if it doesn't originate on his range, should not be laid at his feet. That's not fair. That's not how we do things. That's not how the law works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Ricci.
Ricci. Thank you, Mr. Ricci.
Before we close, I'd like to add if you can copy everybody here that has an email, if a zone variance follows the land. Because I cannot find that in the Guam law.
Well, let's put it this way. That is a legal question that we have. It'll come out in our legal opinion.
All right.
Because that was raised by my chief deputy as we were discussing this. Yep. Okay. So, thank you.
I couldn't find it
Well,
in the Guam law.
usually it's by case authority where they adopted the law from. Some stuff,
I couldn't find it either. That's why I depended on the government officials to tell me everything was okay.
yeah, but recognize that if it doesn't follow the land, then there's a greater chance that the license may not be valid because there was a transfer of ownership stuff.
Correct.
So it's not in the Guam land use document that it only followed the this particular applicant. So, but that's why the lawyers are here. We're going to try to see what the judges have, the interpretive history basically. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chief. One last question. In regards to like the fence and the barbed wire and so forth, doesn't the government have a responsibility or maybe even a liability to a thriving business and a taxpayer to give them advance notice of some of these oversights?
The balancing of the interests is very important of what we're discussing here. These people here don't want people to get hurt, and that's why you had that barbed wire on the top of that fence. So I would, that's why you can't just renew a license if it doesn't comply with the original 1982 authorization. And you can't say because we gave it to you last year, then we're going to continue to let you do it and no longer have that requirement. Because at the end of the day, guys, what happens when you shoot somebody is permanent. Okay. I think everybody in this room respects that. If you get shot with the round, there's a high probability that's it. And nobody, I think, in this room would want to see a round go to that school over there. So, I think we've all had this kind of like time to vent and to express our concerns about this. The AG's office now has a duty to help our government understand how how we can compartmentalize all your concerns into a document, a legal opinion that's going to issue, and then try to find some solutions if it's not where we want to be. Okay. That's why I keep talking about the process is very important here, what we're going through. So having said that, Mr. Sablan, thank you. Unless there's anybody else on a closing, yes.
I just wanted to say something because it hasn't been brought up yet at this roundtable. Other than the fact that the businesses that run it are affected, the individuals that have businesses that certify citizens to get their concealed weapons permit. Our range is the only legal place for these instructors to certify citizens of Guam to apply for the concealed carry weapons permit. Without that, and I can attest because we were given the cease and desist on Thursday. We had 2 classes scheduled on Saturday. I had to reach out to these businesses and let them know that we can't operate. They had to cancel numerous students. And the effect of that, these students are not able to apply for their concealed weapons permit. If you're not aware, the law states, and it's funny because any military veteran with a DD-214 can apply, whether 40 years, 1 year out of service. Any citizen of Guam needs to have some kind of certification.
Right.
And if they have not served in the military, how are they supposed to get that certification?
Well, that goes into my concern about, this is the only shooting range we have. We have a statute that relies upon certification for concealed weapons permits. And this gentleman will tell you right now that I'm in the process of attacking that law, that I don't believe it's Second Amendment right that you have to get certification in order for you to carry your firearm. So that's in the process where the AG's office is trying to work on that issue. But for purposes of point well taken, and right now the system is set up so that you will not get a concealed weapon permit without getting certified by somebody that's gonna be using your range, and without your range, they can't do that.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
pretty much making that point just to kind of help you in your decision for a temporary operations.
Yes.
Because we schedule 3 classes with each instructor a month.
When did the range shut down?
Thursday, around 3 PM, I believe, we were issued the cease and desist.
Last week?
Last week,
Thursday?
the 24th, I believe. Friday is the first full working day we cease operations.
Okay.
Saturday, we had 2 classes, 2 different businesses scheduled. Those businesses hold about 2 to 3 classes every month separately. Within those classes, some might have 2 students, some might have 40. We've seen 40 before, and those people are just trying to exercise their Second Amendment rights.
Understood. Thank you very much, Mr. Bond.
And if I may, General Moylan, with regards to business licenses, the statute, as far as I understand, does not allow for a temporary business license or a conditional. So it's either the issuance of a full license for the year, or, again, there is no
And
3-month or 6-month.
right, this is, point taken. And what I would probably be considering, if that was the case, discussing with the government officials here, potentially a commitment by Mr. Sablon to cut short that business license, provided that we can talk about it if it goes that way. We're not ready to be there yet, but I cannot do certain things that that are in the statute that I have to be respectful of. But that doesn't mean that Mr. Sablon can't agree to a temporary license, provided that he can get his business, and then agree that we as a government would terminate it at a certain point that's less than that. So thank you for that. Okay, guys, thank you all for being here. Sorry if it's longer than you expected, but it is a complex issue. It deals with a constitutional right to bear arms. And, I hope to have something out as quick as we can once we get the facts straight. Okay?
So Attorney General, I guess I'm understanding that we do not have our business license then.
At this point, what was it, Revenue Tax or Land Management issued
So with regards to the business license, again, we rely on clearances from the various agencies. And of course, we were waiting on review by land management.
that was a cease and desist.
Where there was a cease and desist that was issued on August 24. Our team did actually go out and issue a notice of violation, and I can provide a copy of
Right.
that particular document, and then perhaps that can be reviewed by
Yes,
you.
thank you, Mr. Sablon.
We got the
because-
notice of
Right,
violation.
and you've been
What we don't have is, we don't have a document from land management telling us what the
Well,
issue is as
the-
far
I
as
guess-
them not signing off on it.
Mr. Borja, is there anything else that you want to add? The reason why, was it land management that did not sign off on it?
Land management did not clear on that.
And the reason why land management did not clear it is because,
The conditions were not met or were not proven that they were in compliance with the 1982.
and we're talking about
Notice
those
of
4
action.
conditions that we
That's
just spoke
correct.
of.
That's correct.
The two red, and this is now from our meeting together, Mr. Borja has identified that it's based on those 4 conditions. I'm gonna look at the 4 conditions, the barbed wire, that might be the death blow, but I'm not gonna tell you to build it right now yet, okay? Because there may be something else that's going to prevent it.
That's exactly why I was asking for it in writing, because the reasons for
No, I
that
got
they
you.
keep giving me is different.
Well, we now have a group of people in good faith discussing it. And then I've got to talk to you and our group more about the NRA certification. There was a reason back in 1982 that the Guam Land Use Commission put the certification by the National Rifle Association, I believe,
That's correct.
as one of the 4 conditions. We'll talk more about that, okay?
Yep.
Okay, well, that is the reason. One more. Mr. Lai, okay.
You're saying that because of 4 conditions did not meet. Now, when the land management originally look into those 4 conditions, is it because of claims that are looking into this situation and when did the initially.
Well, Mr. Lai, I think it was brought out because the license was dormant for such a long time, they reissued it. There was a concern by Rev and Tax because of it. They put in their note on one of the licenses it had to be re-inspected, which I get, because we're talking about maybe 20 years or 10 or more than 10 years of dormancy. So out of an abundance of caution, Rev and Tax had noted that on the original business license, it never really was inspected. So when it came up with the renewal, it triggered that get that inspection done because it hasn't been done yet. We're at a point now that I'm not too concerned about that because you've operated, you've had your business, there hasn't been no harm in other case. He's done his business. Now there's a potential harm that's occurred because August 24th, he's not operating. So given that, let us do our work, okay?
Going back to the thing, how they would occur without having the inspection for the occupancy permit. That's what I'm not getting.
Yeah, let's just say that's a sub-issue right now, sir. Let us focus upon what it takes to deal with this right now. I get what you're saying. I'm not concerned about the license issuing and what was issued by the license 2 years ago. I'm concerned about Mr. Sablon's rights to get a renewal and what are the impediments now? Okay, let's focus our energy there. I don't want to make this bigger than it actually is. Okay. Right, but I mentioned there was a note on that business license that said it had to be re-inspected. So he actually got a benefit in advance of anybody inspecting it, because this could have been stopped maybe 2 years ago had they not given it to him and required the inspection, that sort of thing. So I'm not really seeing an injury yet, but I see it as of August 24th. Okay, so let's work on that time frame. Okay, thank you all for attending. That'll be the conclusion of the roundtable. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for coming by.
My office. Yeah.